This is McCook's Mr. Bill. Hands up, don't shoot. Yeah, I run a candy truck for 32 years, but to be able to do that, I have odd jobs, including for 41 years I've been working part-time at a ranch. So I have a little different perspective on how things should go, be it with children on the street for 32 years or working livestock. We had a shooting down there in Missouri. I've already done a video on it. I took a lot of static for it too. But be that as it may, let's do a different spin to it. And it's this simple. If you had a horse, and a horse can be dangerous. I said they can be. My great uncle back in the late 1920s walked up behind a horse and slapped him on the backside, and that horse kicked him in the chest and it killed him. He was dead. So there's nothing to be fooled with. You got to know what you're doing, right? Okay. But let's say a horse knocked you down or threw you off, skinned you up real good, and you pulled out your gun and you shot him 6 times. I said 6 times. You'd be in jail, wouldn't you? For animal abuse. You bet. Absolutely. But in Missouri they shot a man 6 times that was unarmed, and nobody goes to jail. In fact, they said it was justified. In other words, a horse has more rights than a man. You want another example? Okay. How about this one? In New York, a man was selling cigarettes illegally. Not wise, not smart, not legal. Big deal. Probably down the street there was somebody selling cocaine. They didn't touch him. But with that in mind though, it took 6 cops to pile on one man, and they choked him, and he's begging for air, saying, "I can't breathe." Somebody might have wanted to listen to something like that. And after they choked him to death, nobody tried to give him CPR, did they? The film plainly shows he's laying face down on the cement with his hands still handcuffed. Yeah. So take it from my mindset. If a horse was being belligerent on a given day, and you and 5 of your friends jumped on that horse and strangled him to death, you and all 5, because if a crime's committed, you're all guilty. All 5 and yourself, 6 of you total, would all be in jail for animal abuse, for choking a horse to death, just because he was being belligerent. That's my mindset of it. But you're here for a story, and here's one from southwest Nebraska. Years ago, we had a state patrolman here in McCook, a young man. His range was heading west, is what he watched out for as a state patrolman. He was driving the road one night, and the car was driving along without any tail lights. So he kicked on his lights, the car wouldn't pull over. Kicked on the sirens, again the car didn't pull over. And then the old beater car, it went down a dirt road, so he followed him. Then it pulled into a yard with an old junky house that didn't look like anybody lived there. So the cop jumped up and he got out of his car and he ran over to that other car, yanked open the door and shoved his .357 Magnum in that guy's face, saying, "Get out." Well, the law officer said that he didn't remember too much after that, because he said 2 giant hands came out of that car and grabbed and took his gun away from him. And it's preceded, the man got out of the car and beat over the head that cop with that gun. And the cop couldn't fight him, so the only option he had was to run for it, and he did. Jumped in his police car and got the devil out of there. Got on his radio and was hollering for help, saying, "We need a SWAT team over here and a whole bunch of law enforcement. There's a crazy man attacked me and took my gun." Luckily, that night there was a sheriff, county sheriff, and he said, "Well, tell me license number, and he got the license number. He said, okay, tell me, where are you? And he said, he told him, he said, okay, I know where that is. And he said, we don't need no other law enforcement. And he said, in the morning, he said, I'll go out and I'll get the man. We don't need you. You go back to McCook and go to the hospital if you need to and get fixed up, whatever you need. And I'll take care of it on this end tomorrow morning. And reluctantly, the state patrolman did what he was told. Well, the old county sheriff, all by himself, went out there to that place, and old junky old house and everything, walked out there, and here's a giant of a man. And he walked up to him, and he said, I hear you had some trouble last night. And the big man was mentally slow, to say the least. And he said, a man chased me home and pointed a gun in my face last night. And so I took it away from him and hit him over the head and told him, my mommy says you're not supposed to point guns at people. And the county sheriff said, yeah, I figured it was something like that. And he said, well, we got to go to town and get this all straightened out. And the big man said, well, I've got to feed these cattle. And the county sheriff said, that's fine. You go feed those cattle. And when you get done, we'll go to town. Okay. So the big man went and fed the cattle. And when he came back, he asked the sheriff, he said, do I need to change clothes? And the old county sheriff, he said, no. He said, I'll have you back out here by the evening so you can feed cattle again. Okay. He said, but I need the gun that you took from the police officer. You got that? And he walked over and picked it up. It was just laying on the ground, and handed it to him. And how strong a struggle was that? Well, the gun on that .357 barrel was bent. Yeah. With that in mind, he got the guy in the car. He didn't handcuff him or nothing. He just put him in the back, and they went to town. And the county attorney and the county judge had a devil of a time trying to figure out how to undo that, because when you assault a state patrolman or any law enforcement, plus take their gun away from them, you're looking at prison time. That's the least you're looking at. So they was having a devil of a time, but they figured out some shenanigans so that he didn't have to go to jail. He was a big man. He'd never been in trouble before, and again, he was mentally slow and barely able to drive, and maybe not even legally for that as far as that goes. They just gave him a license. And the place he lived in, well, a rancher had it, and he just lets him live there and feed cattle and gives him enough to eat on and everything like that, just out of mercy more than anything else. With that in mind, though, they said, well, we'll give you 3 years probation. And okay, whatever. And so they gave him 3 years probation, and got him back out there that night so he could feed cattle. He never had trouble again, and they fixed his taillights for him. But be that as it may, rather than to go ballistic as you've seen law officers do in a number of places, or think you got to have a dozen cops jump on somebody and when they're begging for mercy, there is another way. And I have to say with pride that Southwest Nebraska has a number of those law officers that still to this day abide by that type of mentality. You rate this film, and let's hope everybody can calm down, both sides and all races, so that we can have a Merry Christmas and a safe Christmas for all.